Welcome back, mission-driven moms. Many years ago, I lived in a neighborhood with a friend who was a pharmacist. And she was a pharmacist near a university that was close to our homes. And we had this conversation one day. I kept hearing about more and more women that were getting onto antidepressants, and it was becoming concerning to me. And so I asked her about it, and she said, "Audrey, you cannot believe how much the numbers are climbing. Where it used to be predominantly women, more and more men are getting onto antidepressants, and every year there's this huge percentage leap in the number of students from the university campus that are coming over to my pharmacy and getting antidepressant prescriptions for themselves." This is something that I have thought a lot about for a long time and been concerned about for a long time. And a couple years ago, I was watching a TED Talk. I can't remember the lady's name now. She's a researcher and has done all these things in the way of understanding love, how the brain works when we're in love and what that looks like. But one thing that she said as a side note in her presentation was she gave out a warning about antidepressants because she said we can't know what their long-term impact is going to be on our physiology, and that can be very dangerous for us because we're flattening out our emotions. But she said something that has stuck with me ever since. She said that in the previous year, this was 3 or 4 years ago now, there were 100 million antidepressant prescriptions written in the United States, just in the United States. And I have thought so much about that. In the meantime, if you know anything about my book, The Mission-Driven Life, I write in there many of the reasons why I wrote the book. But I want to talk for just a minute about another really important reason why I wrote the book, because I was fascinated with life mission, and I wanted to know what made that happen for people and what the difference was between people who had a really positive impact on society and people who were really powerful but had a negative impact on society, and all those things fascinated me. I read all these biographies. But one of the biggest reasons, in addition to what I write in the introduction of that book, is this particular issue in our nation, that we are depressed, we are anxious, we are flocking to therapists like never before in the history of the world. And it's very disturbing, it's very upsetting, and it's specifically because we don't have purpose. In the 60s, Bibles were taken out of the schools. Our religious systems began to really break down. At one point, the Bible was our national book. It was read by everyone, talked about by everyone, and now it has completely fallen off. The number of people that have actually read the Bible, especially in its the complete Bible, it's a very small percentage of our nation. And we don't have that glue, that moral foundation, that set of values that holds us together anymore. And that also gave us a sense of purpose and meaning, and that connection with God especially. And so now we have, we're emotionally and spiritually broken. Many are spiritually bankrupt, thus the rise in addictive behaviors. I mean, the addiction is rampant, all kinds of addictions all over the place. Addiction recovery centers are all over the country. It's a major, major, major problem. And if you've watched my post, The 3 Reasons Moms Must Pursue Life Mission, you'll remember that I talked about Viktor Frankl and his work before World War II and after, his new brand of therapy called logotherapy, which meant meaning therapy, where he helped these teens, at first teenagers who were committing suicide over these tests that they were forced to take, and then later concentration camp and war victims and others who had really been taken advantage of or victimized by this war and were suicidal, and he helped them find meaning and purpose in their life and thereby help them to not commit suicide. And I wanted to know not just how, I understand now how important, not just from Frankl, but from so many authors, how important life purpose is. I also wanted to understand how it worked. How can a person find life mission, and how can there be a formula to that? Like, how can that happen consistently? How can I follow someone's path. It's like my husband helps a lot of couples, and he used to say all the time that you could find plenty of happy couples who had happy marriages. Me, maybe not so much today, but you find a couple who has a very happy marriage. Then you ask them why they have a happy marriage, and often they'll say things like, well, we never fight, or we go on a date once a week. And those are good answers. They're part of the formula, but usually they can't actually tell you how they got there. And even many of these greats that I was studying couldn't communicate to me, this is how we got there. I had to find that formula. And when I finally had read enough and studied enough and discovered that and was doing it in my home, I wanted to share that with the world, because we are depressed and we're addicted and we're anxious and we're unhappy and we're unfulfilled. And when we make that connection with God and when we prepare ourselves for mission, so much of that falls away. I'm not saying there's not clinical depression, and I'm not saying this is a catch-all solution for every person in every scenario, but I am saying that much of the time, those things fall away. I remember I had a really close friend at one point, and she kept coming to me and complaining about her husband and complaining about her husband. And I knew that they had trouble in their marriage, but I kept saying to her, look, you have to find what's yours. The only way you're going to stop obsessing about this marriage is if you find what's yours. And that's what Life Mission is. And that's why I want to focus specifically on moms. Now, I wrote the book, The Mission Driven Life, for a broad audience. Anybody can read that, take the 7 laws into their lives, and work on Life Mission. But here at The Mission Driven Mom, we're talking about motherhood, because moms are in this really special niche, in this really special place where we can't just run off and do something full-time that we really love doing. We have to find this balance. And you know what I think? I think it's this amazing opportunity. I think that instead of it being something that holds us back, instead of motherhood being a limitation, like so many in the feminist movement wanted us to believe or want us to believe, it's actually an opportunity to become more than we could have become. It's a chance to expand our capacity to learn how to love in deeper and more meaningful ways, and to take that information, to take who we become through motherhood out into the world and make a difference in our communities as well, while helping our children to do that in their lives and modeling that for them. So I wrote the book so that we could have something higher and bigger to work toward, something elevated to reach for, something that inspired us and motivated us to help us get out of this funk that we're stuck in with these addictions and these depressions and these anxieties. And I know that it can do that for us if we'll follow and obey each of those 7 laws. So I want to invite you to a Facebook Live training this week with me in the Mission Driven Mom Mastermind Facebook group, where we're going to go more in depth in these 7 laws. I'm going to tell you some stories about some other people. The book is written just about the 10 booms. We're going to talk about some other mission-driven individuals. I'm going to answer your questions specifically about the book and about these 7 laws. It's going to be awesome. And if you're already in the group, please pass this on to friends that you think would really enjoy this opportunity to discuss this book in depth, because they've got to be part of the group in order to join us. So share this out there and encourage them to join the group so they can be there with us this week on that Facebook Live on these 7 laws of life mission. And remember, if this was valuable to you, if you're loving what you're learning at The Mission Driven Mom, please pass it around. If you don't have a copy of The Mission Driven Life, please go to themissiondrivenmom.com and grab a copy and start reading it so that you can get on that mission path, and especially so that you can get on this Facebook Live with us and talk to us about the book and bring any questions to me specifically that you might have about the book. Remember that you do have a mission. God has an important life work for you. All you've got to do is prepare yourself for that work and then hear the call when it comes.